Welcome to the first edition of Poker News' newest podcast, True Gambling Stories. I'm your host, Sean Chafin, and our new show is a bit different from other poker and gambling podcasts. Each month we'll highlight one unique tale of poker and gambling lore, complete with dice, cards, betting, casino chips, and even an occasional six-shooter. Our first tale features the inside story of one of the longest craps rolls in history at a Las Vegas casino with a unique link to the island of Hawaii. The Craps King. The California Hotel and Casino is off the beaten path. Far away from the Strip, the old casino is located in downtown Vegas at the intersection of East Ogden Avenue and North Main Street. Main Street Station is across the street, but the Cal sits apart from the old-school party atmosphere of Fremont Street and casinos like the Golden Nugget, Binion's, and the Golden Gate. The property was the brainchild of casino impresario Sam Boyd, who founded the gambling joint back in 1975. Sam originally planned for the casino to cater to Californians, but that didn't work, and he quickly looked for another way to bring in gamblers. As a young man, Boyd lived in Hawaii for several years. He knew islanders liked to gamble and went about trying to make his casino a home away from home for Hawaiians. Dennis Ogawa is a professor in the American Studies Department at the University of Hawaii. He specializes in the study of Japanese Americans, one of the state's largest ethnic groups. His book, California Hotel and Casino, details Islanders' love of the property and Sam Boyd's connection to Hawaiians.
Many years ago, and this is 1930s, Sam Boyd, the founder of the California Hotel, when he was only in his 20s, came to Hawaii. And he was a minority. It was primarily, where he was working, it was primarily Japanese, Hawaii Japanese. And that was the connection, initially, that he learned and was accepted warmly within the Hawaiian Japanese community. For about 10 years or so, he stayed in Hawaii before World War II started. And so he knew the community. And, to do good business, you have to know your customers. And you have to develop a bond and a trust, with them, particularly, in hotel business, because it's the loyalty factor of people returning. So he learned that, and he never forgot, his experience in Hawaii.
Sam's plan worked, and the Cal has long catered to residents of the Hawaiian Islands to bring in gamblers. Visitors will notice the relaxed atmosphere Boyd brought to the property. Sam's effort attracted many vacationers from the islands looking for a good gamble, and many still head there for the action each year. Today, Hawaii is one of only 2 states with no forms of gambling. None. No lottery, no bingo, no horse racing, no blackjack, and of course, no craps. Even from the early days, Boyd offered cheap vacation packages to islanders looking for a gambling fix, and that continued with the company under his son Bill Boyd. Deals on chartered flights from Hawaii sometimes were as low as $10. Today, dealers wear Hawaiian shirts, and the Cal's website uses the motto, "Aloha spoken here." Flying over for weddings, family reunions, and other special occasions became a tradition for many Hawaiian families. Some say the Cal hosts more Hawaiian high school reunions than any hotel in Honolulu. Simply put, the Cal wouldn't be the Cal without Hawaiians. Boyd Gaming now owns 24 properties, many larger than that original downtown hotel casino. But the Cal was the first and remains an important part of the company. Boyd still runs 5 charter flights a week from Las Vegas to Honolulu, bringing eager Hawaiians into town. Many of those return several times a year. So many years later, and with more than 30 casinos lining the Vegas Strip, Hawaiians are still coming to the California.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? You got a place in the middle of the desert, and in Hawaii people come from the middle of the Pacific. But it's a matter of relationships. It's a matter of what Bill Boy says is that he's been very loyal to his customers with respect to the food, the hospitality, the people-to-people sort of long-term sort of ties that he's created, and he's honored them.
It's a pretty safe bet that the California casino is far better known in Hawaii than anywhere else in the country. Stroll through any major casino on a crowded night, and chances are the people having the most fun in the room are at the dice tables. Gamblers of every background and bankroll crowd around those long tables, hoping for those dice to bounce the right way. Drinking, yelling, hand claps, and high fives with total strangers are all part of the fun. A big roll certainly makes for a fun night. That was certainly true for Honolulu's Stanley Fujitake. Stanley was a regular dice player at the California, and he and his wife Satsuko visited often. Stanley's son Dennis describes his dad as a simple man who worked as a carpenter all his life. However, his one love was getting away to Vegas once in a while for some gambling. Stanley was no stranger to big rolls at the Cal's tables. Friends remember on one trip, he rolled the dice for an hour and 45 minutes. He hit number after number without crapping out, as casino staff looked on, astounded at the scene, the table racks filling with chips. That was a big roll, but another one would even top that. Craps has its roots in New Orleans in the early 1800s, and then spread along the Mississippi River onto other parts of the United States. The game began appearing in gambling joints in the late 19th century, then expanded into more and more casinos. However, even by the 13th century, Europeans were tossing dice in various games of chance, all looking to beat the odds and take home a few bucks. So tossing dice and betting goes all the way back to the Middle Ages. Today, craps tables are located in every major casino from Monte Carlo to Macau to the bright lights of Sin City. Craps can look intimidating. The big table with lots of numbers, and crazy terms like yo and wheel and the horn bet. But it's really pretty simple. Michael Shackelford is the man behind WizardOfOdds.com. He's a former actuary who's made a career out of analyzing casino games. He breaks down the basics of the game.
Okay, craps is a rather complicated game that has dozens of bets on the table. However, the one bet the whole game is based on that almost everyone makes is called the pass bet or the pass line bet. To win that, you either have to roll a 7 or 11 on your first roll. If you roll a 2, 3, or 12 on the first roll, you lose. Anything else, for example, a 5, that will be referred to as the point. And then the same person will roll the dice over and over until he either rolls that point again or a 7. If a 7 comes first, the player loses. If the point comes first, the player wins.
In essence, a shooter rolls to establish a point number. A 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, or 10, and then attempts to roll that number again before hitting a 7, referred to as crapping out. After that first roll, known as the come-out roll, avoiding a 7 is a must. It's not easy. There are 6 ways to roll a 7 with those 2 dice, more than any other number. Wagers on the board vary, but if the shooter hits that point number without rolling a 7, Those betting with the shooter win.
Okay, to win or lose a pass line bet averages about 8.5 rolls. However, if the player wins the pass line bet, he gets to hold on to the dice and do it again. So the same person will throw the dice until he what's called sevens out. That means that a point was established and the shooter rolled a 7. You do not pass the dice if you roll a 2, 3, or 12 on the first roll. It's only by the dreaded 7 out.
On May 28, 1989, Stanley Fujitake was ready for some action. It was a Sunday. Emerson Fittipaldi had just won the Indianapolis 500 earlier that day. That same year, the San Francisco 49ers won their 4th Super Bowl, and the Oakland A's swept the San Francisco Giants in the World Series. The first George Bush was just beginning his term as U.S. President. Back in Las Vegas at the California casino, Stanley had craps on his mind. Just before midnight, he dropped $5 on the pass line and took the dice in hand. What followed would become a Vegas legend. Stanley rolled the red dice down the table, and rolled, and rolled, and rolled. He hit number after number, 6s, 8s, 9s, 5s, and even those tougher 10s and 4s. The dice bounced down the table over and over, and he avoided those dreaded 7s. Those who worked at the Cal remember Stanley as a quiet, unassuming man with an infectious smile. A man of few words, he rarely said anything. A consummate gentleman every time he came in the casino. At the craps table, most people just grab the dice and give them a toss. Not Stanley. He was meticulous. He'd carefully pick them up and go through a routine, setting them on a particular number and then trying to hit a certain spot on the far wall of the table every time. He'd try to be consistent, as if he could force them to land on a favorable number. The more he rolled, the more people began to notice. Gamblers jumped in on the action, crowding around and slapping their chips on the felt. Guido Metzger is Boyd's director of gaming operations, and was a craps dealer at the Cal that night. He remembers the action like it was yesterday. He was at the table next to the one Stanley was destroying.
Once this thing went an hour already, I mean, that's when the buzz started. That's when people are like, oh my God, guy's been rolling an hour. Once it reached the hour and a half point, now, like I said, people are calling people. There's more people walking in the door. There's more people showing up, and people now, the downtown people are starting to hear from, at Binion's the Horseshoe and, all those other clubs going, hey, there's an hour and a half hand going next door. Then it reaches the 2-hour mark. Before you know it, everybody on the table is just so elated with every time Stanley's rolling, yet another point number. The high fives are starting every time a 4 and 10 rolls. So it's almost every number that hits, people are getting big payoffs. So it's just an exciting time.
And what about Guido's table? It was completely empty. In an average game of craps, shooters rarely roll into the double digits, and streaks of more than 30 minutes are rare. Stanley defied all odds. As Stanley continued to roll, the Cal struggled with chip payouts as players tried to squeeze in bets on the table. Staff couldn't get chip fills to the table fast enough to keep up with payouts. They eventually had to start issuing casino credit. Think of that. It's a pretty crazy scenario. The casino was writing IOUs to gamblers because not enough people were going to the cage and cashing in their chips. With those dice landing on point number after point number, the casino was simply running out. Dealers worked double time to keep up with a felt full of chips and making payout after payout. Guido Metzger again looks back on the scene.
Yeah. Whenever the 4 and 10 hit, those are the best numbers you can have, because if you have a place bet on those numbers, back then a buy bet on those numbers, gets paid double. So our maximum was the $2,000 bet. Most of the players playing on the table were there. Not everybody, but most of them were there. So every time a 4 would hit, multiple people are getting paid $4,000. So you got 40,000, 10 people getting $40,000 on one roll of the dice. The next one, the 10 rolls, and then it erupts again with the high fives, and there's another 40,000 going out. It was just that magical.
It was a dice player's dream and a once-in-a-lifetime scene. Back then, the casino had mirrors on the ceiling, so players even standing 5 and 10 deep could see everything going on. Before you knew it, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and the casino looked like a Saturday night, with so many people streaming inside to take in the action. Just over 3 hours after that first toss of the dice, Stanley finally crapped out. A loud groan went through the casino as the amazing roll came to an end, but there were plenty of smiling gamblers who cashed in. During his mystical roll, Stanley tossed those dice 118 times for an astounding 18 pass line winners. After beginning with the table's minimum bet, the Hawaiian sharpshooter had increased his bet to the table maximum of $2,000 when he finally passed the dice. He walked away with $30,000 that night, while others made over $100,000. When it was over, the cow had paid out over $750,000. David Stroud is Boyd Gaming's VP of Communications and spoke on the payouts that night.
So as the game went, the other players were wagering much larger amounts than Stanley. So, Stanley obviously won quite a bit of money that evening, but he won quite a bit more money for all of the players that happened to be lucky enough to get a spot at the table while he was rolling, simply because of the amounts that they were wagering. And based on the stories I've heard, there was quite a bit of scrambling and jockeying to try and get in there. There were a lot of people waiting in back trying to squeeze their way in, but you had about 10 or 15 people that managed to fit in around the rail that were very, very lucky to be there while he was rolling. And needless to say, they weren't going to give up their spots once he was underway. Stanley Fujitake's achievement was a world record. That wasn't just something that was unique for the cow or unique for downtown Las Vegas. No one had ever done that before, held the dice for more than 3 hours. Statistically speaking, it was a miracle what he did.
To be specific, the probability of this feat is 1 in 31,516,527. According to Michael Shackelford with WizardofOdds.com. A miracle indeed. Stanley's role became legendary. The casino lost big bucks that night, but the marketing wizards at Boyd Gaming saw an opportunity. They devised a new craps promotion for the California. Stanley was nicknamed the Golden Arm, and the Golden Arm Club was born. Inside the cow, a glass trophy case shows off Stanley's hand cast in bronze, holding those winning dice from that night in 1989. Small golden plaques next to the case display names of craps players. How do you get into the Golden Arm Club, you might ask? Any player who rolls for an hour or more before crapping out earns the honor. It's not easy. Only about one new member a month is added. Guido Metzger remembers how the nickname came about.
His name after that night was just famous in Hawaii after that. It was just incredible.
That's cool.
As a matter of fact, I think he's the one that coined the name Golden Arm, because when he came into the general manager's office later that evening, they were talking about the roll. Again, you have to imagine the guy, typically didn't say 3 words. He came into the office and he looked at the general manager and he pointed to his arm, like he made the muscle, and he said golden arm, like to kind of brag about it a little bit, which that wasn't even his style or his demeanor to be like that, but he was just he was that, just kind of happy about something this exciting happening to him that was even out of his character to say something like that, and then the name stuck.
There are now more than 300 players in the club. If you manage to roll for 90 minutes or earn Golden Arm status more than once, your name gets placed on the more exclusive Platinum Wall. Stanley even became a Platinum member himself after reaching the 1-hour threshold 4 times through the years. The casino now hosts the annual Golden Arm Craps Tournament in his honor. Boyd's David Stroud notes that the whole promotion has made the casino a popular stop for dice players.
Obviously, the Cal and Boyd, we probably lost a few $100,000 that night, so it was not a cheap night for us. But in the years since, we have recouped that investment so many times over on so many fronts, and I think the Golden Arm Club is one way we did that. It kind of began as a way to kind of honor Stanley Fujitake for his feat, and over the years it's become part of the brand of the Cal in the Hawaiian Islands. We'd obviously had enjoyed a relationship with the Hawaiian Islands and the Hawaiian people prior to that evening, but that is kind of built on the legend of the Cal, if you will, in terms of being a very lucky place for players. And so the Golden Arm Club is a way to honor that achievement and to kind of celebrate achievements and those who kind of follow in those footsteps.
The Fujitakes visited the California pretty regularly until Stanley's death in 2000. Since 1989, a few other big rolls have topped Stanley's. But the Craps King from Honolulu and that magical night at the Cal won't be forgotten. His wife Satsuko is now elderly and suffers from dementia. She was always proud of her husband's achievement and said this to Hawaii News Now a few years ago. As my husband of 54 years, in my heart, he is still the champ and will be forever. We hope you enjoyed our first show. If you did, please let others know. We could really use your support. Give us a like or a nice comment on iTunes or wherever you access the podcast. A big thanks to our guests, Professor Dennis Ogawa, Guido Metzger, David Stroud, and Michael Shackelford. The show was written and hosted by me, Sean Chafin, and edited by Robert Moreno. Please visit us on Facebook via @TrueGamblingStories, and on Twitter we are @GamblingPod. You can follow me on Twitter @PokerTraditions, and if you like these kinds of stories, please buy my book Raising the Stakes on Amazon.com. If you have an idea for a story we should feature, please let us know. Look out for our next podcast in late February. And lastly, for all your poker and gambling news, information, videos, podcasts, and my feature writing, please visit pokernews.com.